This is VOA News. I'm David Byrd. Former Vice President Joe Biden is holding his first fundraising event after announcing he will run for the Democratic nomination for president next year. AP's Sagar Meghani has more.
Great to see you.
Outside a Delaware pizza parlor, Biden greeted friends and brushed off reporters asking why he's the best candidate in a crowded Democratic field.
That'll be for you all to decide.
But says he does have a message heading into the race.
America's coming back like we used to be. Ethical, straight, telling the truth.
An implied jab at President Trump, whom Biden blasted in his announcement video for saying there were very fine people on both sides of 2017 Charlottesville violence. The president has marked Biden's campaign entry by tweeting, "Welcome to the race, Sleepy Joe." Sagar Meghani, Washington.
French President Emmanuel Macron has pledged to cut income taxes for middle-class workers. Macron made the vow Thursday during a planned speech outlining his response to months of anti-government protests. He said it's up to the government to decide the tax rate. It seems to me that if we manage to reduce the income tax by 5 billion euros more than what has already been done and planned, it will be a significant gesture. The French president said he wants to cut taxes for a maximum number of citizens, and especially those who are working the middle class. Macron said he is considering financing the measure through cuts in public spending and by making people work longer before they retire. He didn't elaborate on that last point. The speech comes after nearly 6 months of so-called yellow vest protests over Macron's economic policies. For more on these stories, be sure to visit our website, voanews.com. You can also follow us on the VOA mobile app. This is VOA News. Tens of thousands of people marched in Sudan's capital Thursday for what organizers called a million-strong march in support of civilian rule, just weeks after Omar al-Bashir was ousted from power. Naba Mohaideen reports from Khartoum.
Tens of thousands of Sudanese poured onto Khartoum's streets Thursday, calling for military leaders who toppled Omar al-Bashir to hand over power to civilian leaders. Sudan's main protest group, the Sudanese Professionals Association, organized the march after talks with the Transitional Military Council deadlocked. 3 members of the TMC resigned late Wednesday after the SPA called for the march. The military ousted Bashir on April 11 after 3 decades in power and 4 months of anti-government protests. Military leaders took over, promising elections within 2 years. But protesters are demanding immediate civilian rule and have refused to leave the streets. Naba Mohaideen for VOA News, Khartoum.
The human rights group Amnesty International says U.S. coalition forces killed more than 1,600 civilians in an air campaign to retake the city of Raqqa from the Islamic State. As Henry Ridgwell reports, the figure is many times more than that acknowledged by the coalition.
Following a 2-year investigation, the group says it has gathered names for more than 1,000 of the victims and says it has verified 641 deaths on the ground in Raqqa.
This is not a situation of a few individual cases, isolated cases. It is much more systemic than that.
Amnesty worked alongside the investigative group Air Wars, spending 2 months on the ground in Raqqa, interviewing survivors and visiting strike sites. In response to the evidence it has presented, Amnesty says coalition forces have acknowledged far fewer civilian deaths. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
The U.S. Embassy in Colombo has advised people to avoid places of worship in Sri Lanka this weekend, citing Sri Lankan reports that additional attacks could occur. The warning comes just days after a devastating attack on Christian worshippers Easter Sunday, when suicide bombers killed more than 250 people. Officials had earlier set the death toll at more than 350, but revised the number Thursday, saying some of the bodies may have been counted twice. Sri Lankan police continue making arrests in connection with Sunday's attacks, telling reporters that they have arrested more than 70 men and women from all over the country. A mixed day on Wall Street, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average losing 0.51%. Some poor earnings reports dragged the industrials lower. The S&P was also off, but the Nasdaq rose 0.21% on good reports from Facebook and Microsoft. I'm David Byrd, VOA News.